Namo Buddhaya. So this is the one part of the citation of the award. Maha Bodhi Society, Bengaluru, India. Most Venerable Acharya Buddha Mahathera. Born in Imphal, Manipur, grown up in traditional Indian family, exposed to scientific temper, participating in the Indian freedom movement, experiencing the horrors of World War II as an army officer, renouncing and exploring the truth and meaning of life, he found the ultimate answers in the teachings of the Supreme Buddha. He found Maha Bodhi Society in Bengaluru and its organizations in different parts of India and world over. He is none other than Most Venerable Acharya Buddha Mahathera, a Buddhist monk of deep wisdom and boundless compassion. On the occasion of his birth centenary in the year 2022, in his memory, this prestigious award is instituted by the Maha Bodhi Society, Bengaluru, to recognize and encourage the people of exception who serve the cause of the Buddha Sasana and humanity to bring peace, happiness, and values in the society.
Citation. Maha Bodhi Society, Bengaluru. Most Venerable Acharya Buddha International Award, a tribute to Most Venerable Bhikkhu Bodhi Mahathera. We honor Venerable Bhikkhu Bodhi Mahathera, born on December 10, 1944 in Newark. A doctorate in philosophy, ordained in 1972 in Sri Lanka under Venerable Palangoda Ananda Maitreya Mahathera. Bodhi Bhante has devoted his life to spreading the Dhamma through his writings and teachings, exemplifying discipline and service. His time at the Maha Bodhi Society in Bengaluru with Venerable Acharya Buddha in 1975 is fondly remembered. Bhante's legacy shines in his contributions as editor and later president of the Buddhist Publication Society, Kandy. His classic translations, marked by clarity and precision, with Atthakatha notes of the Pali Sutta Pitaka, along with many other authentic books, continue to guide countless truth seekers. As the founder of Buddhist Global Relief, his compassionate vision extends to combat suffering and hunger while empowering women globally and helping war victims. Maha Bodhi Matrimandala in Arunachal Pradesh has benefited from his generosity, ensuring nutritious meals for children. We, the President and members of Maha Bodhi Society, Bengaluru, Maha Bodhi Maitri Mandala, Arunachal Pradesh, and all the Maha Bodhi organizations present this prestigious award with gratitude and salutations to Venerable Bhikkhu Bodhi Mahathera, founder of Global Buddhist Relief and the President of Buddhist Association of United States. On the 2nd February 2025 at Maha Bodhi Society, Gandhinagara, Bengaluru, India.
Now I request Guru Bhanteji, President Abad, General Secretary Puja Ananda Bhanteji, Buddhadatta Bhanteji, Sugadan Bhanteji to put the shawl on Bhante. Let's say sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Now I request to present the International Acharya, the medal, Acharya Buddha Rakita medal. Sadhu, sadhu. And now the recitation. Certificate. लोग बैठ जाइए बनते ताकि बाकी लोग देख सकें. Some nice pictures. Please take a picture. And I request Balke sir on behalf of all the lay Upasaka to offer the Chivara and Upasika Shreya to offer a flower.
टाइम देना है ना.
जी. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. This offering on behalf of Upasaka was chosen. Anand Bante told who are in full white, they should be given. And this was a surprise. Otherwise, I would have taken the opportunity, but I am in a black pen. So next time when you visit, it's an encouragement that we come in full white because we get such wonderful and a fan, traditional fan to Bante. Now I request a group picture with Bhikkhu Bodhi Bante and all the Bhikkhu Bantes to look into the camera for a picture, please. I must not forget to thank Dr. Chandrasekhar, who has been instrumental in designing and bringing this beautiful Dr. Acharya Buddha Rakita International Award. Okay, please. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Thank you very much.
आपको ले जाएंगे बंदे, पैक करेंगे संजय. आइए ना, इसको ले लीजिए.
We are very, very grateful to Bodhi Bhanteji for receiving this award, a small way of our paying respects and recognizing and expressing our gratitude on behalf of all the monks and devotees of Bengaluru, and a lot of people came from far away places. People came from Mumbai here. Somebody came from Ladakh. Somebody came from Bengal, Tamil Nadu. So from far distances, our devotees have come. So we all together, it is a way of expressing our gratitude to Bhanteji, respects to Bhanteji. Thank you, Bhanteji. Now I request Bhanteji to release 2 publications on Bhante's visit. We thought to remember this for many people. As Dhamma Dana, today we have published 2 books. I request to bring the first book, Dhammapada. Now, Dhammapada is translated by our Bada Bhanteji. And the introduction is written by Bodhi Bhanteji. So that this one. sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. This Dhammapada has the English translation. But they can hold it when they. I request all of you to collect after the end of the program. This will be a gift for all of you. And I request now to bring the second book, that is Going for Refuge and Taking the Precepts. A very, very valuable book, practical book for the people, common people, that is written by Most Venerable Bhikkhu Bodhi Mahathera. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. This book contains why you should take Sarana in Buddha, Dhamma and Sangha. Very beautifully explained. And taking the precepts, what exactly it means. What is the strengthening? What is the weakness? What is the pollution of Trisarana, or what is the pollution of this Panchashila, and how it strengthens, and how it is the path of enlightenment. In a very succinct way, Bhanteji has written. So I thought this is so valuable book for in English, and later we should translate this into our Indian languages, which we will try to do. Thank you, Bhanteji, for this. And I request all of you, please collect this book also as free Dhamma Dana from Maha Bodhi Society. Now we have taken a lot of time of Bhanteji to conduct these programs. Without much delay, we will now listen to Bhante's Dhamma talk. Enough hai kya hai?
Enough है बंदे.
Bhante को ही डाल दिया. अच्छा. Here Bhante. Miss. Excuse me.
Okay.
Huh? ठीक है.
Testing. Testing 1, 2, 3. I don't think the sound is reaching.
थोड़ा आवाज.
Testing 1, 2, 3.
Yes, Bhante.
How about in the back row? If you can hear. If you can't hear, raise your hand.
If you can't hear.
If you raised your hand when I said if you can't hear, it means that you heard. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Homage to the Blessed One, the Worthy One, the fully enlightened one. Okay, first I want to thank Bhante Kassapa, the president of the Maha Bodhi Society, and Bhante Ananda for providing me with these honors and felicitation, which seems to elevate me to a level at which I don't assign myself. Okay, as Bhante Ananda mentioned, I spent the 9 months in 1975 at the Maha Bodhi Society of Bangalore, this very place, though at that time this hall was not here. We just had that small assembly room on the second floor of the original building. And during that time, I learned a lot. I received a lot of inspiration, a lot of ideas from Venerable Acharya Buddharakkhita. And it was in fact in that very assembly hall in the old building that I gave my very first Dhamma talk in my life as a monk. How did that come about? Every Sunday, Acharya Buddharakkhita used, in the afternoon, he used to lead a meditation and then give a Dhamma talk. And then one Sunday, he said to me I will be going to another place this coming Sunday, and I want you, myself, and a Swedish monk staying with us named Venerable Lakana, I want you two to give the Dhamma talk. And that was completely unexpected to receive that order from Bharabante. And I was just so anxious, so worried about giving a Dhamma talk in front of an audience, not an audience this size, maybe about 1/3 of the size. So I believe I wrote out the whole talk and sat there reading the talk, but it seemed to have gone off successfully. And it was during those 9 months here that I received an important part of my training as a monk from Acharya Buddharakkhita. You see, when I was living as a monk for 2.5 years in Sri Lanka, my whole focus was on studying the Buddhist texts and doing meditation. And at the time that I came here, there were a group of young boys, maybe ranging in age from maybe 10 to 15. They were brought from Ladakh. One was Tibetan, maybe a couple from other parts of India. So they were staying here, receiving their education. And every morning and evening, they would assemble in that meeting hall and conduct the puja, reciting the devotional verses. And one day, Acharya Buddharakkhita said to me, are you going, perhaps he came up to inspect the assembly hall and didn't see me there. And he said, are you going to the recitation morning and evening? And I said, Bhante, I'm a Western monk. I want to learn the Dhamma and practice the real serious meditation Dhamma. That devotional stuff is not for me. And then Bharabante really scolded me. And he said, you're omitting one of the most important aspects of the life of a monk. You have the rare opportunity to become a monk in the teaching of the Buddha. The least you can do is show veneration to the Buddha, the Dhamma, and the Sangha by joining the morning and evening recitation. And so from that point on, I started to attend the recitations, and I found them very, very beautiful and uplifting, and they became quite an integral part of my life as a monk. Yeah, some of those Pali verses, the wording is very simple, the meaning is very simple, but I found them very inspiring. And so I've made them a regular part of my practice to recite those verses. The talk that I want to give this afternoon is based on a sutta in the Anguttara Nikaya. It's the Book of Fives, and it's sutta number 47. It's about 5 kinds of wealth. Now, and I chose the sutta for the basis of this talk because it's a sutta which is very, very practical for lay followers of the Dhamma. I don't like, for lay people, I don't think it's necessary to give or advisable to give highfalutin talks on the details of dependent origination or the very advanced stages of magga and phala attainment, or how to attain nirodha samapatti. But I think we as practitioners of the Dhamma, we have to have a kind of humble attitude and look at the basis, look at the fundamentals, establish a sound foundation, a solid and strong foundation. Then we can progress gradually, sequentially towards the higher stages. And so this sutta on the 5 kinds of wealth covers very beautifully those fundamentals. And I think the Buddha probably chose this theme of dana, of wealth, because this corresponds to the aspirations and needs of people living in the world. So in ancient India, people who were farmers, merchants, householders would be striving diligently through their livelihood, through their work and occupations to acquire wealth to support themselves and their families. And so the Buddha wanted to point out that there are these 5 worldly kinds of wealth, but 5 other kinds of superior wealth. And in today's world, I think this sutta becomes especially important because different societies, different nations around the world have developed an obsession with wealth. So the drive to acquire more and more monetary wealth becomes such a push, such a motivation for people, particularly multimillionaires and billionaires, that they're willing even to destroy the whole economy of their country, to destroy even the vital support, biological support systems of this planet, just to amass more and more wealth. And we see this particularly with the pursuit of the fossil fuel corporations, the executives, to gain more and more wealth by extracting more oil, gas, coal from the ground, burning it, selling it, and burning it, which throws more and more carbon dioxide and other noxious gases into the atmosphere, destroying the life support system of this planet. And yet they understand this, but that motivation to acquire wealth, to accumulate more wealth, to become the highest, most richest billionaires, even eclipses their responsibility to protect the life-supporting capacities of this planet. So what are the 5 kinds of wealth that the Buddha is speaking? What he calls the Arya Dana, the noble wealth, the wealth of the noble ones. And so these are, first I'll just enumerate them, then I'll elaborate. The wealth of saddha or faith, the wealth of sila, virtuous conduct, the wealth of tyaga, generosity, the wealth of learning, and the wealth of wisdom, panya or prajna. Okay, so the wealth of faith, adhadana, the Buddha starts with faith because faith is the starting point for all development in the Dhamma. There's a sutta in which the Buddha calls faith the seed, saddha bijam. It's in the Sutta Nipata. So just as a plant grows up from a seed, and the seed, when you look at the seed, it's very small. Maybe we have in North America, there's a tree, the oak tree, and it has the seed, it's called the acorn. The acorn is about the size of my top part of my thumb. And so if you look at that seed, it's insignificant. But that seed, the acorn, falls to the ground, gets covered over by soil, rain falls, and time goes by. A sprout comes up from that acorn. It grows larger and larger. It spreads out its branches, and branches bring forth leaves, and it becomes a very powerful tree which can live maybe for hundreds of years. And yet it all develops out of the acorn. And so faith is like a seed. So we plant that seed of faith in the heart, and we water it with our devotion and our other practices. And in time, that seed of faith will bring forth purified sila, the different stages of samadhi, the different stages of insight, knowledge, vipassana jnanas, and then the attainment of the world-transcending path and fruition stages, culminating in the attainment of nibbana. So all of that begins with saddha, with faith, which is the seed of the spiritual life. And in the Buddha, in the sutta, when the Buddha is explaining what is meant by saddha, he says that the disciple has saddha in the enlightenment of the Tathagata. The Tathagata is the Buddha, and the object of that saddha is not so much the Buddha. The object of that saddha is not so much the Buddha as a human being, as a person, as the sage Gautama from the Shakyan clan, but rather the object of saddha is the enlightenment of the Buddha. So one has faith in Gautama as a fully enlightened one, as a Buddha. And what makes him a Buddha is his attainment of the Anuttara Samma Sambodhi, the supreme enlightenment. But there are also, we can say, in an expanded conception of saddha, 3 objects of faith. And those 3 objects of faith are the triple gem, the Buddha, the Dhamma, and the Sangha. And to underscore the value of this kind of saddha, this kind of faith, there's another sutta in the Anguttara Nikaya called the Agabhasada Sutta, the discourse on the foremost types of confidence. And there the Buddha says that of all living beings, whether those with 2 feet, 4 feet, many feet, no feet, of all living beings, the foremost being is the Tathagata. That is the Buddha, the fully enlightened one. And somebody might say, well, the Buddha is saying that about himself. He must be boasting, bragging. But it's not the case, because the Buddha has eradicated all traces of conceit, pride, self-glorification. And so he's just become the voice of objective truth, the voice of reality, speaking out loud. And so he's stating this as a fact, that of all living beings, and so of all spiritual teachers, the Buddha is the foremost. And so when we have confidence and trust in the Buddha as the foremost living being, the foremost teacher, then we have the foremost, the best the most excellent type of faith. And then the Buddha goes on to say that of all spiritual teachings, in all their diversity, the foremost spiritual teaching is the Dhamma taught by the Blessed One. Because that Dhamma taught by the Blessed One guides us to the practice of the Noble Eightfold Path, and it is the practice of the Noble Eightfold Path that leads us irreversibly to the attainment of liberation and the realization of Nibbana. And so therefore, when you have confidence in the Dhamma as the teaching expounded by the Buddha, we have confidence in the best of all spiritual teachings, the foremost Dhamma. And then he says, in the third place, amongst all the different spiritual communities, different sects, different religious orders, and in India during his time, there were many different orders, many different belief systems with their followers. He says, this is the foremost, the Sangha of the Blessed One's community of disciples. And he refers especially to the 8 types of noble people, but we can say that conventionally speaking, in terms of what we could see and experience for ourselves, again, I'm not speaking boastfully, but the foremost spiritual community is the Sangha of the Buddha's monastic disciples. Because even if we have all of our human defects, but we are walking the path that leads to enlightenment and liberation. Okay, so those are the 3 foremost types of confidence, and those types of confidence arise from faith. And how does one express that faith or manifest it or give it a kind of concrete expression? The way that faith comes to concrete expression in the Buddhist tradition is by the act of saranagamanan, the act of going for refuge. And so when we go for refuge, that means that we recognize, first of all, that our life is beset by dangers. That is, a refuge is something that provides security from danger. And the danger that we face especially is the uncertain, unpredictable nature of samsara, even the perilous nature of samsara. And so we're seeking some release, some outlet from that suffering of samsara. And for this, we need a secure refuge. And so we go for refuge, we look upon the Buddha as being our teacher, not simply a great teacher, but we take him personally as our teacher and as the one who embodies in his person all excellent qualities, all beautiful and wonderful, wondrous qualities, perfect purity from all of the defilements, including their subtle imprints on the mind, perfect penetrative wisdom which understands the nature of all dharmas, and great compassion, the unparalleled wish and aspiration to liberate sentient beings from suffering. So in this way, we go for refuge to the Buddha, and then we go for refuge. The Buddha, we could say, is the one who points out the path, but we have to walk the path ourselves and to find the guidance that teaches us how to walk the path. We turn to the Dhamma, the teaching, and take the teaching, the Dhamma, as a guidebook to walking the path. And then we need friends, advisors, and helpers to help us walk the path. And so we take refuge in the Sangha. And so going for refuge, taking the three refuges as one's guiding ideals, that is the way one expresses saddha, or faith, in a manifest concrete form. Okay, then we come, so that is the wealth of faith. Okay, then next we come to the wealth of virtuous conduct, sila dana. And this is sort of the natural result of developing faith and going for refuge, because when you go for refuge, you're looking to the Buddha for guidance, you're taking the path, or the Dhamma as your guide to the path, and the foundation for the practice of the path is observing sila, developing good modes of conduct, wholesome means of conduct. So sila, it's disciplined conduct, behavior that conforms to basic guidelines. And for the lay disciple, the most basic form of sila are the 5 precepts. And so I believe they were cited earlier today, so most of you probably know them even in Pali. So we take the precept, panati pata veramani sikapadang samadhiyami, the precept to abstain from the destruction of life, to abstain from stealing, to abstain from sexual misconduct, to abstain from false or deceptive speech, and to abstain from the use of intoxicants. So these are very, very simple, fundamental principles of the moral life that, as followers of the Buddha, once we develop that faith, we mold and shape our conduct in accordance with these precepts. And just as when you take refuge, you recite the formulas for the refuges, so when you take the precepts, you should recite the formula for the 5 precepts. But it shouldn't be just a mechanical repetition. You have to understand the reasons for taking the refuge, the precepts. And the reasons are because observing these precepts are beneficial both to yourself and to others. First of all, they're beneficial to ourselves because it's our actions, our bodily and verbal actions, as well as our thoughts, that create karma. And so it's the karma that we create that remains in the mind, that remains with us. So when we grow old and die, we can't take anything with us. Even the body has to go. What do we take is our karma. And so if we engage in actions that break the precepts, that violate the precepts, we are creating unwholesome karma that gets imprinted and accumulated in the mind, and then a death leads to an unhappy, miserable rebirth and to all sorts of suffering and affliction in the course of our lives. But when we take the precepts, even if we don't go any further in our Buddhist practice, but you just develop a very strong knowledge-based commitment to the precepts, then you accumulate wholesome karma that helps to purify the mind of its bad tendencies, and that wholesome karma will at least lead to a fortunate rebirth under good conditions back into the human realm, or possibly into one or another of the Deva realms, the heavenly realms. But observing the precepts, when the precepts are formulated, you see that they're formulated in a rather negative way, abstaining from this, abstaining from that. when you really understand the precepts, you see that underlying each of these precepts, there is a particular virtue that motivates the precept and that is strengthened as we strengthen our own commitment to the precepts. So when you abstain from the destruction of life, you do so because you understand that all other living beings want to live and preserve their lives and to live happily. And so that generates the tendency to kindness and compassion. When you observe the precept to abstain from stealing, you understand that others want also to protect and preserve their own property, their own wealth, their own belongings. And so you strengthen the tendency to honesty. You remain honest in your dealings with others. When you take the precept to abstain from sexual misconduct, it means that you determine to remain faithful to your partner. And so you develop the sense of responsibility to your partner and to the others in your family. When you take the precept to abstain from false or deceptive speech, you make a commitment to truth. And truth is very powerful. As we say, etena sachavajena sotite hotu sabada. By the statement of truth, may you be well and safe. So truth can become a very powerful force. And by observing that precept, you develop in your mind what we might call the satyabala, the power of truth. And when you take the precept to abstain from intoxicants, you preserve a clear mind, a sober mind, a mind that's able to see things accurately, correctly. Whereas when a person gets intoxicated, then they just live in a world of their imagination, their fantasies, and they become addicted, spending so much money on in order to preserve that, to maintain that habit, especially of drinking. Yeah, and so when we look closely at the precepts, we say that each precept has an aspect of abstinence, avoiding one action or another, but also the aspect of positive performance, which is the virtue cultivated by that observance of the precept. And so this is the way the precepts serve to protect ourselves, but they also, by observing the precept, they also protect others. One thought experiment I want to give you. Every hour in this world, how many people do you think are being murdered? Not even putting aside war, people being killed in war, people being shot or stabbed or poisoned every hour. Probably thousands of people. And so we could think that if everybody in this world were to observe just one precept, let alone 5, just one precept, how much better this world would be. There would be no killing, no murder, no wars. I'm sorry, I have to apologize to the executives of the weapons corporations, but they'll have to find some other business. Yeah, so when you observe the precept, then you're protecting, you're protecting countless beings. So when I take that precept to abstain from killing, then everybody can feel safe in my presence. Nobody has to worry that they're going to encounter any harm from me. And when you observe the precepts, it builds up a certain force within the mind stream that sort of radiates outward. so that even people who don't know you, who meet you for the first time, just when they encounter you, they feel safe in your presence. It's hard to explain how that happens. Probably most of you have encountered that. You meet a good person, and you just feel when you see them, it's a good person. It's because that person is kind of radiating something. In the 1960s, we used to call it the vibes, the vibrations of the person. But it's probably true, probably pointing to a fact that the mental process has different kinds of vibration. And when a person is living an ethical life, it spreads out good vibrations. The good vibrations emanate out in an invisible way, and others pick that up. Whereas a person who's corrupt, angry, vicious, greedy, and so forth, a liar, dishonest, when you meet that kind of person, you've never seen them before, but you just are introduced to them, you just feel something is wrong and you want to avoid that person. So that is one of the results of observing precepts. And now there's another aspect of sila that I think has to be given special importance to that today. Maybe not so much emphasized in ancient times, but more important today, and that is what is called the sila, the virtue of benefiting sentient beings. And that means that it's part of our ethical practice, our moral practice as Buddhists, not as Buddhists, as Buddhists, to find ways to promote the welfare and happiness of others. So that was one of the reasons, the thoughts that was in my mind. Bhante Ananda mentioned the organization I established in the US called Buddhist Global Relief. You know, what I observed about Buddhists in America, those who are becoming involved with Buddhism, always taking it just to be a very quiet inward practice of meditation. But I thought it's important to put sort of sila into practice, or compassion into action. And so we established an organization which we were going to solve all of the problems of human condition, from opposing political tyranny, economic exploitation, natural disasters, climate change, with a little group of about 8 people, none of whom had very much money. And so we decided that we had to narrow down the focus, and we took a more specific mission, is to address the problem of hunger and malnutrition in poor communities around the world. So we started with the focus on hunger and malnutrition, and then to tackle the roots of hunger and malnutrition, we realized that it's important to promote the education of girls so they can fulfill their aspirations, completing high school and even going on to college and university, and also to promote, to assist poor women to develop right livelihood projects to earn more to support their families. And so we started in 2008 with just, 3 pilot projects in Sri Lanka, Myanmar, and Vietnam, with a revenue of about $20,000. Now we have about a revenue of about $2 million, and we have currently 60 projects around the world, from Mongolia, Vietnam, Cambodia, Thailand, Sri Lanka, several projects in India, including Arunachal Pradesh, several projects in Africa, Latin America, Haiti, and the United States. Okay, so this covers the area of sila. And now one other benefit of sila that I should mention is in relation to the more progress to the more advanced stages of the path, Sila, the Buddha says, is the foundation for samadhi, or so we can say for meditation practice. And so if we're to succeed and to advance in our meditation practice, it's important to have a strong commitment to the silas, because when we violate the silas, then we're giving expression to the defilements of the mind. And that creates some kind of affliction, mental affliction, remorse, disturbance of the mind. But when we follow the precepts, then the mind can become calm and self-possessed. And that serves as the springboard or foundation for advancing in bhavana, in the meditation practice. Okay, now we go to the third kind of wealth, and that is chagadana, the wealth of generosity. And the word chaga actually has two meanings in Buddhist usage. One meaning is that of relinquishment or renunciation. And in that case, chaga is particularly applicable to monastics who have to practice chaga as a kind of giving up points of attachment. But in relation to householders, chaga takes on the meaning of generosity, of being able to, and chaga, that attitude of generosity, gets expressed through dana, through giving. And so the way one fulfills the wealth of generosity is by practicing giving. And there are many, many different types of giving. In the early Buddhist text, what is particularly emphasized is the mutually supportive relationship between the lay community and the monastic community. Each has a form of dana, of giving to the other. So it becomes the responsibility of the lay community to practice dana or generosity towards the monastics by providing them with their basic material requisites, which include robes, food, which they need on a daily basis, a dwelling place, monasteries, temples, and providing medicines and other kinds of material support. And the monks, in turn, provide the kind of dana that they can specialize in, which is Dhamma dana, the gift of the teaching by explaining and clarifying the Buddha's teaching. Okay, so that is the practice of dana, sort of that's emphasized in the early Buddhist texts. But I found in some later Buddhist texts speak about 3 fields of giving, and I found this quite valuable clarification. They speak about the field of reverence, the field of gratitude, and the field of compassion, the 3 classes of people towards whom we practice generosity. So the field of reverence are the monastics. And so lay people will give to the monastics, as I mentioned, their basic material requirements. And they do this because they have faith and devotion towards the Sangha, and that is the expression of reverence. The field of gratitude would include, for example, one's parents, one's teachers, one's maybe elders in the family, and other people who have benefited you. And so when you want to express your thanks to them, your gratitude, you give them some kind of gift. And then the field of compassion are those in need, those who face maybe poverty, illness, hunger, bodily injuries, or who are in need in any kind of help. And so out of compassion for them, you practice generosity in the appropriate ways. Okay, so that is, in brief, that is the wealth of generosity. And what's interesting about both sila and generosity is that they can be taken as objects of meditation or themes of meditation. So we find this in the 6 recollections, which I believe are too often neglected in the contemporary teaching of Buddhism. But when you observe sila, you can reflect back on your sila and meditate on the silas you're observing, and that can give rise to joy, and the joy will lead on to happiness, and the happiness can lead on to samadhi. And similarly, when you practice generosity, you can reflect back on your generosity and rejoice in it, and again, that will lead to joy, to inner happiness, and to samadhi. And these 3 kinds of wealth, faith, sila, and generosity, I say are the qualities that develop the virtue side of the personality. The next 2 kinds of wealth develop the wisdom side of the personality. The 4th kind of wealth is called sutta dana, which means the wealth of learning. This means that you make an effort to learn, to study the Buddha's teachings. So you don't have to become a deep scholar, profound scholar. You don't have to go to college or university to take courses in Buddhist studies. But if you're really going to seriously follow the Dhamma, to follow it with a full commitment, it's important to study some aspects of the Buddha's teachings, at least to take a selection of important suttas and to read those suttas, to read them seriously, slowly, not rush through them like you're reading a novel, to keep a notebook where you take notes of the important points and try to remember those points, to impress them on the mind. And one way, very simple way to develop maybe this wealth of learning, if you don't have one yet, you pick up a copy of the Dhammapada, and as part of your regular recitation, what you can do is just every day read 1 chapter of the Dhammapada. So 1 chapter might have about 20 verses. It takes 2 or 3 minutes to read through the chapter. If you read very slowly, maybe 5 minutes. And there are, 26 chapters? I should know that. Great scholar, but yeah, he's right. Okay. 26 chapters. So if you read 1 chapter a day, then in 1 month you've gone through the whole Dhammapada. Then what do you do after that? You don't put it aside and say, I've read the Dhammapada. But the next month, you start from chapter 1 and you read through it again. And you do this for a year until the teachings will become deeply impressed on your mind, and you'll have quite a good knowledge of a very practical, everyday Dhamma through the Dhammapada. It doesn't mean that you just read the Dhammapada and nothing else, but this will build up a good knowledge of the Buddha's teachings from many different angles in your mind. So that, we could say, is the wealth of learning. And then the 5th kind of wealth is called the wealth of wisdom. And this is the wisdom, sort of like, you see, when you do the study of the Dhamma, reflecting on the Dhamma, then you're starting to mature the faculty of wisdom. You're bringing it to life. Now, to gain the actual wealth of wisdom, the Buddha says that this is the wisdom that discerns, that directly perceives the arising and passing away of phenomena of Dhammas. He says it's the wisdom that's noble and penetrative and that leads to the complete extinction of suffering. So this is the wisdom that develops through systematic meditation practice. So we have to begin generally with the meditation subject that will collect and unify the mind in order to overcome the various distracting thoughts and inner disturbances. But then we take that unified, focused mind and we direct it to see into the nature of the phenomena, the bodily and mental phenomena that constitute our own identity. These are summed up in what the Buddha calls the 5 aggregates: bodily form, feeling, perception, including ideas, volitional activities, and consciousness. And so with direct insight, one sees that all of these dhammas, all these phenomena are subject to constant arising and falling away, arising and falling away, arising and falling away. And this wisdom that sees arising and falling away, what do we call that? Yeah, I'm not asking for the, okay. It's the insight into what? Into tanha. No. Arising and falling away represents what? Anicca, anicca. It's the insight into impermanence. And you could develop that insight into impermanence. The Buddha says the wisdom of impermanence eradicates, when developed and cultivated, eradicates all the defilements of the mind and leads to the liberation of mind and liberation through wisdom. That's the final goal of the Buddha's teaching. So even though this might be a high stage of development, but what you could do as part of a regular daily practice is simply, as you're sitting by your shrine or your altar, you simply do the contemplative, reflective contemplation. This body is impermanent. All of the cells of the body arise and vanish. All of my feelings are impermanent. They arise and vanish. All of my ideas arise and vanish. All of my volitions arise and vanish. And even my consciousness arises and vanishes. And when you do this on a daily basis, it builds up a foundation for gaining the direct insight into impermanence, which is the wealth of wisdom. Okay, so with this, I think I've covered the 5 kinds of wealth. And so I hope that all of you will be sufficiently wealthy in material terms to enjoy a solid, a stable, and beneficial livelihood. But don't rest content with material wealth, but please make a diligent effort to acquire the more valuable type of wealth, the wealth, these 5 kinds of wealth, of faith, virtuous conduct, generosity, learning, and wisdom. Thank you very much, and let me wish you all the blessings of freedom. Oh, okay. Yeah, Bhante asked whether we can take some questions. I say, yes, we can take some questions.
First of all, I would like to pay homage to Bhanteji and thank very much for this very, very clear, that is the speciality of Bhanteji. These 5 wealths explained in the sutta, how clearly in all their aspects Bhanteji explained So dear Upasakas and Upasikas and also venerable monks, now this is time for your questions and answers. Who would like to start? Yes. उधर दे दो दौड़ के एक दौड़ दौड़ करो.
मैं करता हूँ.
Namaste, Bhanteji. Experiencing anicca and perception is some extent is able to do. But when it comes to experiencing anicca in consciousness is very difficult.
Yeah.
So, how can we really work around that? Consciousness,
Yeah.
anicca.
It is very difficult.
Thank you.
And just the way I've had to do it myself is to watch the impermanence of the thoughts, because consciousness is associated with the thoughts. And so it's very difficult to isolate consciousness from the other mental factors. And so I just do it sort of inferentially from the constant arising and vanishing of thought formations. But what happens, maybe as one continually watches the arising and falling of thoughts, so the stream of thoughts seem to fall away. This isn't a jhana attainment. It's not that kind of cessation of thoughts. But the mind remains there sort of observing, but the thoughts don't seem to be arising and passing away. But you still see, difficult to describe this, a kind of stream of awareness, let's put it that way. A stream of awareness which occurs in distinct units, sort of like it's flashing in and out of existence. And that I would take to be the way I am able to observe the arising and passing of consciousness. Maybe those with stronger, more advanced stages of meditation can see it at a subtler level, but that is the way I see it. So, you come over here so
Namaste to all the Sangha and Dhamma. My question is more of into a practical scenarios of these today's world problems, as you mentioned. That today, I being born as a Hindu and practicing all the rituals and traditions of this country, which was I used to feel like this is the native to this country. But recently, when
this is what?
I'm going to the next science level. The question is like we have a tradition called Basavana and all this Shana tradition in India. They teach both as what Buddha teached and they're both the same. But today my question is, when I came to Buddha Dhamma and understand its true teachings, I was literally felt like Buddha is a great leader of this country, which was completely missed out of that main limelight. And many times in my meditation, I cried like anything that what I can do to bring this into the universal approach. It should not be like no Buddhism or something, Hinduism or something. This is the need of an hour for this entire world, because as you mentioned today, all our political leaders, everybody was destroying Mother Earth, including other biological beings, everybody, and indirectly we are destroying ourselves. Without knowing this consciously, we are all running behind one paper that is called money. The thing is like we are destroying ourselves. So what I can do, most of the time when I sit for meditation, I feel like what I can do for this world, what I can do for this country to bring out of this suffering, because like we are all running behind money without knowing why we need it. It's happiness. The very fundamental, very fundamental, what I can say is the very fundamental, the essence, the true essence of all the happiness is money, but we are misunderstood. So how can we,
it is clear. It's good to formulate the question. I should have said this. Formulate a simple, direct question.
So it's a very simple question, but I was emotionally got.
Your question is, what can I do in this situation?
What can I do? One thing, and a second thing, what I also observed with the people who have came across Buddha's Dhamma in the society is when they understand two teachings of Buddha, they start hating other religious practices. That should not happen because Buddha is nothing to do with religion. Buddha is a universal human being who has taught a true essence of how to live a human life.
Okay. Thank you.
So, I mean, we have to grow above that level. Whoever comes for Buddha's Dhamma,
Yeah.
he
Now
should.
Bhante will give the discourse.
How can we improve?
You don't need to give discourse.
And
How you ask the question, and that is good enough. Thank you.
Thank you.
One is what you can do, and another is when somebody comes to Buddhism, how to overcome hatred.
If I understand,
hating one another.
Hating, how to overcome hating.
okay, if I understand correctly, you're asking two questions. One is,
What can I do?
wait, first, let me. Okay, what can I do to prevent Buddhism from being mixed up with other religions because in order to preserve its uniqueness? And then the second question is, what can I do to prevent like the environmental despoliation, destruction of the earth? Two questions, quite distinct questions there. Please don't elaborate. If you want to give a lecture, maybe Bhante Ananda can schedule you for a lecture maybe next week. Okay. Okay, first, I think that there's a certain tendency amongst Hindu proponents, or religious proponents, to say, but particularly maybe from the Ramakrishna Vedanta school, to say like all religious teachings are pointing in the same direction, with the same goal, that it's just that the verbal formulations of the teachings are different, but they're all fingers pointing to the same moon or roads leading up the same mountain, but the moon light at the top is the same. Yeah, but from the Buddhist standpoint, that's not the case. Like the Buddha went against some of the main trends and tendencies in Indian thought during his time, particularly in rejecting the idea that at the core of the person, there is the permanent Atman or self. So the Buddha made the teaching of anatta, non-self, the sort of the philosophical pillar of his Dhamma. And also in Brahmanism, the idea that behind all of the multiplicity of the world, there is one universal reality, the Brahman. And the Buddha sort of replaced the idea of Brahman with the idea that all phenomena are shunya, empty of any substantial essence. So philosophically, there's quite that distinct difference between the Buddha's teaching and the other teachings. And again, a unique characteristic of the Buddha's teaching is dependent origination, paticca samuppada, which he used to counteract the eternalistic teaching of Brahmanism and other systems, and also to counteract nihilism or materialism. Okay, so that's, when you understand the Buddha's teaching, then you see how it differs from other religious spiritual teachings. So as Buddhists, we don't take a kind of haughty attitude, looking down at others. We try to appreciate what is good, true, and valid in other religious teachings, but we have to recognize those differences. Okay, what can we do to preserve, protect the earth? Here, I think there are probably things you can do that will be available to you in India. Like I live in the United States, and we have the same problem, even worse. So there are various organizations that I'm aligned with. Actually, they might have an Indian branch too. 350.org is one. So it started in the U.S., but I know that they have branches all over the world. So it arose on the basis of the understanding that the number of parts per million of carbon that should be in the atmosphere, the maximum amount should be 350. Before industrial times, it was 275. By the 1960s or 70s, it had gone up to 350. Then Since then, it's been shooting beyond that. Now it might be 415 parts per million, which is very dangerous. So 350.org, we have the Natural Resources Defense Council, the Climate Mobilization Project, the Wilderness Society, Earth Justice, which is a consortium of attorneys who argue environmental cases. So there are probably organizations like that here in India, but you would have to find them. I don't know what they are. But if you're really keen on that issue, you can just do some investigation through the internet, and I'm sure you'll find something.
Thank you, Bhante.
Hello.
Yeah.
First of all, thank you, Bhanteji, for showering us and blessing us with such a powerful topic about different types of wealth. And frankly speaking, I believe this would be the takeaway for me today. Now, I'm not sure if it's a question, but it's more of a reflections that I often go through in my daily life. So Buddhism has been originated in the belt of India, and I see the real sense of Buddhism and the practice that how we do, it seems to be gone. But in my professional life or in the place where I reside, I seems to find people, they don't worship the statue of Buddha, but they will bring statue and keep it in their houses. And even in the corporate office, when we want to show respect and we want to give the highest price of recognitions, and I have witnessed they are giving statue. And this has been very much common around my lives. So at some point of time, I tend to believe, is it like people not having a tag, so-called I'm Buddhist, but they are actually in that field, in that vibe of Buddhism or the teaching of Buddha. So my questions for you would be, do you think the future of Buddhism will not be in the form of statue or in the form of the way we practice, or it will be more of like unconscious way of accepting the teaching of Buddha?
Did you say unconscious way of accepting it?
Yes, they are not like, consciously accepting that I'm sort of Buddhist, they are giving a tag to themselves, but they are actually in the realm of Buddhist teaching. Yeah.
Yeah.
Consciously, everyone is following Buddhist traditions here, but in the conscious, they are getting it. They try to.
Bhanteji, what he is trying to tell is everybody likes the statue of the Buddha, though they don't claim they are Buddhist. So he is telling indirectly people are attracted to Buddhism. Thank you.
Yeah. So since you have a great experience and you have authored so many books, and I wanted to know, what is your thoughts, what is your feelings about Buddhism in the next future?
I think that's too big a question to answer. But if I understand your question, maybe what you're trying to say, is it enough just to worship statues and to make offerings of flowers, lamps, and incense without practicing? Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
But I think one can't look down at people who take a devotional approach to their practice. Some people are more inclined towards devotion, others towards wisdom and understanding. And so the Buddha sort of emphasizes developing wisdom and understanding. But for many, many people, the sort of entryway into the Dhamma is through faith and devotion and simple devotional practices like making offerings, worshiping the Buddha statue, reciting verses. Those are ways of, I would say, solidifying one's connection to the Buddha's teaching and developing wholesome states of mind. Of course, one has to go beyond just devotional practices, but it's just like maybe in a school. Okay, so we start off with kindergarten, then first, second, third grade, up to high school, college. So just because you go to a kindergarten and children are dancing around in circles, playing games, scribbling, making pictures on paper, you shouldn't dismiss this and say, this education is worthless. They're not doing real schoolwork. Yeah, they're doing real schoolwork, but that is the schoolwork of a kindergarten student. And if they're good in this kindergarten work, then they will be able to advance to the later grades and then go on to high school and college. And so it shouldn't look down on the kindergarten children because they're playing games, dancing and singing in the school. But that's the way that they approach going on to a higher grades.
Thank you, Bhante.
Yeah,
I
thank
request dear brothers and sisters to keep the question precise.
Always keep
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Bhante Ji, for sharing your wisdom. My question is also a subtle request. I'm sure you've led a very inspiring life. So I wonder if you've thought of writing your spiritual autobiography, because I think that will inspire a lot of people. So that's my question. Have you thought of writing your memoirs or your autobiography?
Yeah, I never thought of that.
But I wish you would, because I'm sure it'll help a lot of people.
I think Bhante Ananda covered everything interesting about my biography in his introduction.
I'm sure he's left.
Vandami Bhante Ji, my query is regarding those five wealths.
Those what?
That you have espoused five wealths. One of the wealth is faith. Now, in other spiritual tradition, faith is taken as mere belief in the supernatural power, the creator, or merely gods and goddesses. How is it different in Buddhist thought process? How is it different? Faith. Many people get confused because they also feel that belief in Buddha is equivalent to belief in supernatural creator or gods and goddesses. Could you please expound something on this? Thank you.
Okay, well, as I said, faith of Buddhism is the entrance way to the Dhamma. So faith is, maybe I would characterize it as a trust that involves some aspect of understanding. In fact, we might see three aspects that are sort of united in faith. One is the aspect, the emotional aspect, which is the aspect of devotion. So when you have saddha, you have devotion to the Buddha or devotion to the three jewels. But another aspect in faith is, in saddha, is, I use the word belief, in that you are willing to accept the Buddha as an enlightened one and to accept his teaching as the disclosure of the truth. And then the third strand that goes into saddha is volition, that is the willingness to put the teaching into practice. And so one doesn't just, maybe other teachings, other religious teachings, teach salvation by faith. So that's maybe the principle in some more extreme sects of Protestantism. Even Roman Catholicism says there must be faith and works. But in Buddhism, we say there must be faith and practice. So faith is what leads one into the practice of the Dhamma.
Thank you, Bhante.
Namaste, Prabhu. I would like to ask two practical questions, very straightforward. as a strong believer in Dhammapada and also as a Vipassana meditator, I have been facing two practical problems. That is, one, how would I forgive myself? Like I can easily, I am very easily a forgiving person. I can easily forgive others, whatever the mistake is, but I am unable to forgive myself for my past mistakes. This is first question. And the second question is, I have been observing after I have started Vipassana meditation, that is before 8 years I started, and from that time I have been facing a strange problem. I don't know whether it is problem or it is quite natural to others also. It is like my sensations are very strong and I am very strong.
What is very strong?
Sorry? Sensations, bodily sensations are very strong. Like I can easily gauge, my bodily changes. Even if it is very minute changes, like if some ant is crawling, I can easily get it. But earlier it was not that. So am I doing something wrong? I don't know. I would like to get your views on this.
Okay, with regard to the first problem.
How to forgive myself?
Yeah, I understand, yeah. Just say if you make mistakes or you transgress against others in some way, and then you feel some maybe guilt and remorse over that, the way to overcome that remorse, I would say, in my opinion, is you recognize, yes, I've done something wrong, but that is something human. It's human to make mistakes. And I shouldn't oppress myself and condemn myself because of those mistakes. Just recognize that, yes, that was a mistake, and now I make a determination to correct myself in the future. And just maybe take the attitude of forgiving yourself. I forgive myself, and I'm going to make a determination to behave more properly in the future.
I have never made a same mistake twice, Prabhu. But
never made the same mistake twice.
Yeah, I have never. I mean, like for example, if I have done some mistake, I never repeat that after I become conscious of it. But somewhere. Maybe it is quite natural for any human being to make daily mistakes. Like sometimes I have to lie to my little one to see that he is safe. Yeah. I feel very guilty of that also. I feel very conscious of that. I don't know whether it is right or wrong, but I am unable to forgive even such tiny mistakes of mine. I don't know where I am heading.
Yeah, I think the same principle applies, that again, when you make mistakes, you just recognize that that is a human tendency, and I'm going to try to avoid that kind of mistake in the future. You seem that you're successful. You said I never make the same mistake twice, so at least you're correcting past mistakes. Yeah, you just recognize that condemning yourself for any kind of mistakes you make is just making life miserable for yourself. And if you make life miserable for yourself, you're going to project it out onto others and make life miserable for them. Okay, and then the second question about becoming extremely sensitive to sensations after doing vipassana. Maybe that's a natural consequence of doing that style of vipassana that's taught by S.N. Goenka, where you're always observing sensations in the body, so then you become sensitive to every little, even when you're not in meditation, you become sensitive to every little sensation that arises from the outside. Yeah, I don't know what to do about it. Just don't pay too much attention to it, I think.
Yes. So now I will just want to take a question.
This is the last.
There are lots of questions though, but Bhante, now as she expressed that while she meditates, she become quite conscious, and when we enter into spirituality or talking about even when we say Okasa Vandami Bante, Dwarate Nakatang Sabang Apradang. So sometimes at home I listen to I'm good, I'm positive, I'm great. But then I come, before I start my walk, I come here and I say, Apradang, what wrong did I do? Then it takes me into a negative, oh, I am guilty about it, or I'm not this. And from nowhere, something comes up. So then I feel like I'm starting my day on a negative note where I'm not aware of the aprada that I have done. And of course, then I tell myself Vandami and I try to remember the Buddha that I'm paying salutation. But when it comes to aprada, I feel a little negative about it, Bhante. How to look it in positive?
I think the way to look at this in a positive way is that you've recognized your aparadang, your wrongdoing, and now you sort of confessed it and asked for pardon. And if you're doing this in front of the monks, then they will say, Kamami kami tabang. So I pardon whatever can be pardoned. And so you're pardoned. You're
I'm just asking, forgive.
and then it comes up into the mind.
That you have not done anything.
Well, I think that's a good thing that you're becoming more conscious. So that's the way you correct yourself in the future.
Most Venerable Bhikkhu Bodhi Mahathera, Vandami, as a person who has read your literature widely, and somebody, even my, as a person who has read your literature widely, I have read all of your Majjhima Nikaya numerical discourses, rest of your stuff in Buddhist Bodhi Society, Candy's literature also. So as a person, I first started reading your literature from Majjhima Nikaya actually, sir, Bhante. And when I read Majjhima Nikaya, it was like, first of all, Bhante Mahathera, you are educated into philosophy and, Buddhist, trained in Buddhism with such excellent people like Balangada, Anand Maitreya, and then Jnanatilaka, Jnanponika and all. But then there is, once anybody reads Majjhima Nikaya from you, Mahathera, what happens is that one feels that you are not just well educated, but you are in a way gifted by Dhamma. There is an innate feeling that one gets that you are innately gifted by Dhamma to write those texts in such a way that when anybody who is, trying to understand Majjhima Nikaya, okay, that was the first text that I read, it feels as if Buddha actually is talking to you, that is the kind of impact that reading your text has on, followers of Buddhism, or anybody who even gets introduced to Buddhism, he started meditation and then, he starts reading those texts. It is as if, through your pen, you have written those awesome words that one feels that one is directly hearing those words from Buddha, okay, although he has preached those words 2.5 millennia ago. So coming to my question, Mahathera, is what was your methodology of writing Majjhima Nikaya? What was your method? What was your thought process? What were your steps? What was your methodology? Because your thought process, the way of articulation is obviously so methodical, so scientific, and probably the best of the best scientists would also be highly inspired, okay, by reading those texts, and even anybody who watches your lectures, okay, all around the world of, any text that you preach, the thoughtfulness, and the methodical approach and the approach of selecting the words, it's so precise, concise, that we would like to understand the thought process. What is there in your brain, Bhanteji, and your methodical approach? What is your methodology of coming up with that thought process? Yes.
Yeah. First of all, I didn't write the Majjhima Nikaya. It was spoken by the Buddha, and I didn't translate the Majjhima Nikaya. The published translation was not my translation. It was translated, as the title page says, by the British monk Bhikkhu Nyanamoli, who passed away in Sri Lanka suddenly from a heart attack 1961. And he left behind 3 handwritten volumes with the translation of the Majjhima Nikaya. And they were found after his death. He didn't tell anybody else that he was translating them. And then those volumes were sent to the German monk with whom I stayed, Venerable Nyanaponika. And then when 1985 Wisdom Publications expressed an interest, heard about those translations, and wanted to publish the Nyanamoli's translation of the Majjhima Nikaya. So then Venerable Nyanaponika asked me to prepare it for publication. So I did do some editing on Venerable Nyanamoli's translation. I wrote the introduction, I prepared the notes, some other supplementary material, but the bulk of the credit for the translation to go to Bhikkhu Nyanamoli. It's not.
That's your humility.
Yeah.
Editing is also a big thing. Anyway, go on, Bhante. Yes.
I did do the Sangyutta Nikaya and Anguttara Nikaya, but not the Majjhima Nikaya. Okay, I think we'll have to call it.
Thought process, the methodology. What is your thought process while articulating Buddha? That is my question, Bhante.
My thought process. I don't know.
While articulating Buddha. Yeah. Let it be like numerical discourses, connected discourses.
I never think of what are my thought processes. I just sit down and look at the text and then do the translation.
Your humility is indeed inspiring, Bhante.
Yeah, I'm getting really tired.
Okay, no, now finish. We will finish because Bhante is getting tired. Already 2 hours he has been speaking now, and for his age that is more than enough.
Dear brothers and sisters, I wanted to let you know that we have Sunday Dhamma class every Sunday from 9:15 till 11 o'clock. So I see that lots of unanswered questions are there. So I request you to participate more into the Sunday classes so that your more questions are clear. Thank you.
Okay, so now we are going to conclude the program. This concluding program, we thought Bengaluru Chakma community, we may come and offer the Ashtapariskara, that is Attaparikara Dana. And I request you to add our wonderful children there from Young Dhamma Mind program in this Dana. Children, you also come. They are from every Sunday Dhamma school. The children, you also come and do the Dana so that you get a lot of merit. The Bengaluru Chakma community is very devout and एक मिनट स्टैचू में देता हूँ. हाँ
नहीं इधर बैठो. हाँ
वो स्टैचू दो ना, छोटा वाला सामने रखा है ना.
ಮಕ್ಕಳೆಲ್ಲ ಸ್ವಲ್ಪ ವೇಟ್ ಮಾಡ್ರಿ. ಯಾ ಕಮ್ join your hands.
हाँ
आप लोग बैठो. हाँ
देखो.
या आप भी आओ. I request everybody to be seated, and if you have bought something to offer,
come,
you can come forward and join here. Otherwise, please be seated. Yeah. Afterwards, you can give in the. No, not for you. You can
Children, sit down and you also become part of this offering.
hold this on your head. Can you? Yes. Wonderful. Yes. Yeah, Bhante will guide you.
Yes. Please repeat after the.
Please hold your dana and repeat after Buddhadatta Bhanteji. May I request Buddhadatta Bhanteji to list this offering in Pali? Likewise, if you have bought any dana, you can come forward, but please be seated. Thank you.
Mayang Bhante, Imani,
Attaparikara,
Danani, Anagate
Anagate
Ehi Bhikkhu
Ehi Bhikkhu
Bhavaya
Bhavaya
Pachayo
Pachayo
Hotu
Hotu
Imani Nanavatu
Jnanavatu
Dhanani
Dhanani
Parikharani
Parikharani
Ayasmanto
Ayasmanto
Dakkhinaudakang
Dakhina Udakang
Dinnang
Dinnang
Pujema
Pujema
Bhajema
Bhajema
Danang
Danang
Dema
Dema
Imang
Imang
Punyang
Punyang
Nibbanasa
Nibbanasa
Pachayo
Pachayo
Hotu
Hotu Sadhu Sadhu Sadhu. Yeah, please come forward and you can bow from backside. Just offer the dana into Bante's hand. That's it. Don't say naughty thing. Yeah, if you have done your dana, please give space for other people to come forward.